If Ukraine were to either join NATO or become a nuclear state, the implications for regional and global security would be significant. The relationship between Ukraine and Russia could develop a high-stakes dynamic, much like the rivalry between India and Pakistan, defined by intense distrust, arms races, and the looming threat of conflict escalation. However, unique factors in this relationship could make it even more volatile. First, we would likely see increased militarization. Similar to how India and Pakistan engage in conventional and nuclear buildups, a similar arms race could emerge here. If Ukraine joins NATO, Russia would probably respond by further fortifying its borders, potentially stationing more troops and nuclear weapons in strategic locations like Belarus and Kaliningrad. This heightened military presence could turn Eastern Europe into one of the most militarized regions in the world. Beyond conventional forces, there's also the risk of proxy conflicts and hybrid warfare. With NATO's involvement, the chances of indirect conflicts, including cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, and economic sanctions, would likely rise. Both sides might avoid direct conflict, but work to destabilize each other through these indirect methods. These actions, seen globally in hybrid conflicts, can sustain a constant state of tension without crossing into open war. A nuclear Ukraine would also add a new dimension of deterrence, similar to what we see in South Asia. If Ukraine had its own nuclear arsenal, it would create a two-sided nuclear deterrent model. This could lead to what's known as mutually assured destruction, where both countries would hold the power to respond destructively. However, this situation brings with it a paradox. While nuclear weapons often prevent large-scale war, they may encourage smaller skirmishes. Each side might assume that nuclear deterrence will keep these conflicts contained. Then there's the potential for ongoing cross-border tensions and hostile incidents. Just as India and Pakistan have dealt with incidents of cross-border terrorism, low-level provocations could become a regular occurrence between Ukraine and Russia. With NATO's backing, Ukraine might feel more empowered to take defensive actions, while Russia may use hybrid tactics, like supporting separatist groups, to create instability in regions such as Donetsk and Luhansk. Conflict escalation and proxy support could also play a big role. Similar to flare-ups over Kashmir, Ukraine and Russia might see recurring crises over contested regions like Crimea and the Donbass. Russia could support separatist movements and employ covert operations to keep Ukraine destabilized. In response, Ukraine might lean on Western intelligence and military support to strengthen its defenses, further entrenching the cycle of conflict. Unlike the India-Pakistan rivalry, where global powers often remain cautious and distant, a Ukraine-Russia conflict would almost certainly draw in NATO and potentially the European Union and the United States. This could escalate tensions beyond regional borders, creating global volatility as alliances and strategic interests come into play. Any major escalation could quickly draw superpowers into direct or indirect involvement, raising the risk of a larger conflict. Finally, the humanitarian impact would be severe. Just as border skirmishes between India and Pakistan have displaced civilians, an escalated Ukraine-Russia standoff would bring immense risks to people in border areas. Increased military presence and frequent conflict could lead to internal displacement, refugee crises, and widespread socio-economic hardships for civilians caught in the crossfire. In short, a NATO-aligned or nuclear Ukraine would fundamentally alter the strategic landscape of Eastern Europe. Russia would likely respond with a mix of military posturing, proxy conflicts, and hybrid warfare tactics, keeping the region in a state of constant high alert. The involvement of NATO and global powers would only raise the stakes, with the potential for any significant escalation to spark a broader, more complex conflict than the relatively contained rivalry between India and Pakistan. In an increasingly multipolar world, the stability of Eastern Europe would be closely tied to global security interests, making this a situation the world would be watching very closely.